Hey everybody, welcome to day 112 of our Bible in a Year Plus podcast. I'm so glad to be with you today, and we're going to be talking today about King Solomon, his wisdom, and his temple, which is such a great topic. I love R.G. Letourneau. He just died in 1969, not so long ago, right? He's a wonderful person. His company manufactured most of the earth-moving equipment that was used by our troops in World War II. He is still considered to be the world's greatest inventor of earth-moving equipment. He holds more than 300 patents on his ideas and his inventions. He was an engineer. He could sit at the blueprints and draft his own parts. He knew how to cast the metal in certain recipes to get the temper of the metal just right. And he was a genius for figuring out, things mechanically, but not just mechanically, electrically too. And to this day, some of his ideas are the standards of the entire industry. He was extraordinary. He was a smart person. Also a good salesman, good people skills, a smart person. But even more than that, he was a good person. In the Depression years, when he didn't have any money and they were struggling, he and his business partner, who happened to also be a fellow church member, got a breakthrough contract with the highway department, and his partner grabbed all of the profits from this for himself, and Letourneau was counting on this money, but the partner grabbed all the profits for himself. Attorneys urged Letourneau to take his business partner to court and sue him. They said, there's no way that you're going to lose. You'll sue him, you'll win. But Letourneau read over there in 1 Corinthians chapter 6 that you're not supposed to take your brother Christians to court. So he wouldn't sue his Christian brother, and that was that. He just took the loss. When he had success years later, he lived off of only 10% of his income and gave 90% of his income away. His family loved him. His employees loved him. He's just an all-around great guy. He opened a factory in Toccoa Falls, Georgia in 1939. And here's what the local newspapers said about that. They said, between 4,000 and 5,000 men, women, and children leaped to their feet again and again to cheer while R.G. Letourneau, America's foremost builder of road-building machinery, pleaded with them, his new-made friends, neighbors, and employees, to join with him in helping God to solve the man-made problems of today's world by the simple means of honest work and brotherly love. And the article said, and when Mr. Letourneau decided to open a plant at Toccoa, he did our community its greatest favor. Not only does the plant turn a weekly payroll of over $10,000 into our city, but the high moral standards of the Letourneau employees has added more than we can ever say to Toccoa's civic development. Wow, what a guy. Today we're going to read about Solomon and his wisdom. And his wisdom was unparalleled in human history in so many fields. But unlike R.G. Letourneau, Solomon wasn't wise in the most important field of all, and that is wise conduct. So we pick up the story in 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 1 in the King James Version of the Bible with updated vocabulary, but you can follow along in another version if that's what you prefer. So 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 1. So King Solomon was king over all Israel, and these were the princes which he had: Azariah the son of Zadok the priest, Elihoreph and Ahiah the sons of Shisha, scribes, Jehoshaphat the son of Ahilud, the recorder, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada was over the army, and Zadok and Abiathar were the priests. And Azariah the son of Nathan was over the officers, and Zabud the son of Nathan was principal officer and the king's friend. And Ahishar was over the household, and Adoniram the son of Abda was over the tax. And Solomon had 12 officers over all Israel who provided food for the king and his household, each man his month in a year made provision. And these are their names: the son of Hur in Mount Ephraim, the son of Dekar in Makez and in Shaalbim, and Bethshemesh and Elon Bethhanan. The son of Hesed in Aruboth, to him belonged Soku and all the land of Hepher, The son of Abinadab in all the region of Dor, which had Tapheth, the daughter of Solomon, to be a wife. Baanah, the son of Ahilud, to him belonged Taanach and Megiddo and all Bethshean, which is by Zaretana beneath Jezreel, from Bethshean to Abel Meholah, even unto the place that is beyond Jokneam. The son of Geber in Ramoth Gilead, to him belong the towns of Jair, the son of Manasseh, which are in Gilead. To him also belong the region of Argob, which is in Bashan, 60 great cities with walls and bronze bars. Ahinadab, the son of Edu, had Mahanaim. Ahimaaz was in Naphtali. He also took Basmath, the daughter of Solomon, to be a wife. Baanah, the son of Hushai, was in Asher and in Aloth. Jehoshaphat, the son of Peruah, in Issachar. Shimei, the son of Elah, in Benjamin. Geber, the son of Uri, was in the country of Gilead, in the country of Sihon, king of the Amorites, and of Og, king of Bashan. And he was the only officer who was in the land. Judah and Israel were many as the sand which is by the sea in multitude, eating and drinking and making merry. And Solomon reigned over all the kingdoms from the river unto the land of the Philistines, unto the border of Egypt. They brought presents and served Solomon all the days of his life. And Solomon's provision for one day was 30 measures of fine flour and 60 measures of meal, 10 fat oxen and 20 oxen out of the pastures, and 100 sheep, besides gazelles and roebucks and deer and fatted fowl. For he had dominion over all the region on this side of the river, from Tifsa even to Azah, over all the kings on this side of the river, and he had peace on all sides all around him. And Judah and Israel lived every man under his vine and under his fig tree safely. From Dan even to Beersheba, all the days of Solomon. And Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots and 12,000 horsemen. And those officers provided food for King Solomon and for all who came to King Solomon's table, every man in his month. They lacked nothing. Barley also and straw for the horses and dromedaries they brought to the place where the officers were, every man according to his charge. And God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding exceeding much, and largeness of heart, even as the sand that is on the seashore. And Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the children of the east country and all the wisdom of Egypt, for he was wiser than all men, wiser than Ethan the Ezrahite, and Heman, and Calcol, and Darda, the sons of Mahal, and his fame was in all nations round about. And he spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. And he spoke of trees, from the cedar tree that is in Lebanon, even unto the hyssop that springs out of the wall. He spoke also of beasts, and of birds, and of crawling things, and of fish. And there came from all people to hear the wisdom of Solomon, from all kings of the earth, which had heard of his wisdom. Chapter 5. And Hiram, king of Tyre, sent his servants unto Solomon, for he had heard that they had anointed him king in the place of his father, for Hiram was always a lover of David. And Solomon sent to Hiram, saying, You know how my father David could not build a house unto the name of the Lord his God, for the wars that were around him on every side, until the Lord put them under the soles of his feet. But now the Lord my God has given me rest on every side, so that there is neither adversary nor evil occurrence. And see, I purpose to build a house unto the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord spoke to David my father, saying, Your son, whom I will set upon the throne in your place, he shall build a house unto my name. Now therefore you command that they cut cedar trees out of Lebanon, and my servants shall be with your servants, and unto you I will give hire for your servants, according to all that you shall appoint, for you know that there is not among any of us who have the skill to cut timber like the Sidonians. And it came to pass, when Hiram heard the words of Solomon, that he rejoiced greatly, and said, Blessed is the Lord this day, who has given unto David a wise son over his great people. And Hiram sent to Solomon, saying, I have considered the things which you sent to me for, and I will do all your desire concerning timber of cedar and timber of fir. My servant shall bring them down from Lebanon unto the sea, and I will convey them by the sea in floats unto the place that you shall appoint me, and will cause them to be discharged there, and you shall receive them, and you shall accomplish my desire in giving food for my household. So Hiram gave Solomon cedar trees and fir trees according to all his desire. And Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 measures of wheat for food for his household, and 20 measures of pure oil. Thus Solomon gave to Hiram year after year. And the Lord gave Solomon wisdom, as he promised him. And there was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and they two made a league together. And King Solomon raised a levy out of all Israel, and the levy was 30,000 men. And he sent them to Lebanon 10,000 a month by shifts. A month they were given in Lebanon, and 2 months at home. And Adoniram was over the levy. And Solomon had 70,000 that carried burdens, and 80,000 stone cutters in the mountains. Besides the chief of Solomon's officers, which were over the work, there were 3,300 who ruled over the people that did the work. And the king commanded, and they brought great stones, costly stones, and cut stones to lay the foundation of the house. And Solomon's builders and Hiram's builders cut them and the stone squares, so they prepared timber and stones to build the house. Chapter 6. And it came to pass in the 480th year after the children of Israel had come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month Ziph, which is the 2nd month, that he began to build the house of the Lord. That the house which King Solomon built for the Lord, the length of it was 60 cubits, and the breadth of it 20 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. And the porch before the temple of the house, 20 cubits was the length thereof, according to the breadth of the house, and 10 cubits was the breadth of it before the house. And for the house he made windows of narrow lights. And against the wall of the house he built rooms all around, against the walls of the house all around, both of the temple and of the holy place, and he made rooms all around. And the lowest chamber was 5 cubits broad, and the middle 6 cubits broad, and the third 7 cubits broad. For outside in the wall of the house he made narrowed rests all around, that the beams should not be fastened in the walls of the house. And the house, when it was in building, was built of stone, made ready before it was brought there, so that there was neither hammer nor axe nor any tool of iron heard in the house while it was building. The door of the middle chamber was in the right side of the house, and they went up with winding stairs into the middle chamber, and out of the middle into the third. So he built the house and finished it, and covered the house with beams and boards of cedar. And then he built chambers against all the house, 5 cubits high, and they rested on the house with timber of cedar. And the word of the Lord came to Solomon, saying, Concerning this house which you are building, if you will walk in my statutes and execute my judgments and keep all my commandments to walk in them, then I will perform my word with you, which I spoke to David your father, and I will dwell among the children of Israel and will not abandon my people Israel. So Solomon built the house and finished it. And he built the walls of the house within with boards of cedar, both the floor of the house and the walls of the ceiling. And he covered them on the inside with wood, and covered the floor of the house with planks of fir. And he built 20 cubits on the sides of the house, both the floor and the walls, with boards of cedar. He even built them for it inside, even for the sanctuary, even for the most holy place. And the house, that is, the temple before it, was 40 cubits long. And the cedar of the house within was carved with knobs and open flowers, all with cedar, and there was no stone seen. And the sanctuary he prepared in the house inside, to set there the ark of the covenant of the Lord. And the sanctuary in the forepart was 20 cubits in length, and 20 cubits in breadth, and 20 cubits in height thereof. And he overlaid it with pure gold. So he covered the altar, which was of cedar. So Solomon overlaid the house within with pure gold, and he made the partition by the chains of gold before the sanctuary, and he overlaid it with gold. And the whole house he overlaid with gold, until he had finished all the house. Also the whole altar that was by the sanctuary he overlaid with gold. And within the sanctuary, he made 2 cherubims of olive tree, each 10 cubits high. And 5 cubits was the one wing of the cherub, and 5 cubits the other wing of the cherub. From the uttermost part of the one wing unto the uttermost part of the other were 10 cubits. And the other cherub was 10 cubits. Both the cherubims were of one measure and one size. The height of the one cherub was 10 cubits, and so was the other cherub. And he set the cherubims within the inner house, and they stretched forth the wings of the cherubims, so that the wing of the one touched the one wall, and the wing of the other cherub touched the other wall, and their wings touched one another in the middle of the house. And he overlaid the cherubs with gold. And he carved all the walls of the house, all around, with carved figures of cherubs and palm trees and open flowers, inside and outside. And the floor of the house he overlaid with gold, inside and outside. And for the entering of the oracle, he made doors of olive tree. The lintel and side posts were a 5th part of the wall. And the 2 doors also were of olive tree, and he carved upon them carvings of cherubs and palm trees and open flowers, and overlaid them with gold, and spread gold upon the cherubs and upon the palm trees. So also he made for the door of the temple posts of olive tree, a 4th part of the wall, and the 2 doors were of fir tree, the 2 panels of the one door folding, and the 2 panels of the other door were folding. And he carved on them cherubims and palm trees and open flowers, and covered them with gold fitted upon the carved work. And he built the inner court with 3 rows of cut stone and a row of cedar beams. In the 4th year, the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid in the month Ziph, and in the 11th year, in the month Bul, which is the 8th month, the house was finished throughout all the parts of it, and according to all the fashion of it. So he was 7 years in building it. And that concludes chapter 6 of 1 Kings. All right, so as you can see there, the temple is grand and Solomon's wisdom is grand. We started in chapter 4 talking about his cabinet members. And once again, as I stumbled over names, thank you for being patient with me. And then we see his governors were listed in verses 7 through 19. So important people in Solomon's administration. When you come to chapter 4, verse 20 through 28, you see Solomon's prosperity and how much food was set before his table, and how many people gathered around his table. It was quite a thing to imagine. And then we see mention of his horses in his stables and his stalls. And we just want to notice in chapter 4, verse 26, you see that there were 40,000 stalls. But if you're reading in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 25, it doesn't say 40,000 stalls. It says 4,000 stalls. And some people say, see, the Bible has lots of mistakes in it. But this is not necessarily a mistake. You don't have to think of it that way. Imagine you have 40,000 stalls in 4,000 stable structures. So imagine you have 4,000 large stall structures with 10 cubits in each one. So 4,000 stalls with 10 cubits, that's going to be 40,000 stalls altogether. And we think that that's what's going on here. In chapter 4, verses 29 through 34, you see that Solomon's wisdom is described. And it's interesting, we sometimes have our Bible teachers around us try to convince us that wisdom is different than knowledge, which is different than understanding. But all of these terms are interchangeable in the Bible. And you can see that wisdom can mean just data, academic knowledge, or it can mean theology, knowledge about God, or it can be knowledge of good conduct. And there's no difference between the term wisdom and the term knowledge in the Bible. So when we're talking about wisdom, we think, oh, well, that's something different than academic knowledge, what you get in the university classroom. But it's not different. We see in verse 33 that Solomon's wisdom had to do with biology and zoology and horticulture and agriculture and how to build, structures like engineering. All of this, we might say, well, that's not wisdom, that's knowledge. But no, in the Bible, that's wisdom. You see that wisdom is just the same as normal knowledge. It's not applied knowledge. It's not anything different than wisdom and knowledge and understanding are all the same. And this explains how Solomon could be so wise, but then so foolish. He was so not good later in his life. It's because wisdom can apply to cerebral knowledge, and it can apply to theology, like Gerhard Kittel. If you remember when we talked about them, he was even smart about God. But then wisdom in its best form is wisdom of conduct, how to live, what makes the universe tick, how to relate to God. See, that's true wisdom. That's the best wisdom. And Solomon was very short-sighted and unstable in that kind of wisdom. And that's too bad. He had woefully little insight and woefully little foresight. He could not see. He didn't have that field of wisdom very well, did he? In chapter 5, verses 1 through 6, we see King Hiram from up in the area of Tyre and Sidon, what we call Lebanon today. He's going to help secure materials for building the temple. And just bear in mind that there are 3 different Hirams in this section of Scripture, so don't be confused. This is King Hiram. He is the king of his area, and we're going to talk about craftsmen in just a minute. In chapter 5, verses 13 through 18, we see that there's forced labor, you might say servitude, but those who serve under force are non-Israelites. And so just bear in mind that in the Old Testament, there's a constant differentiation between the Jewish people and the Gentile people. And so it is in this case. In chapter 6, verse 1, we have a very important chronological timestamp. And I'm not going to say much about it, just to point it out that it's very important. And it says that the temple was started at this time relative to the Exodus. And this helps us determine that the Exodus took place in the 1400s BC and not in the 1200s BC, as some people claim. As a matter of fact, perhaps most people claim to be the 1200s, but that's not correct. The Exodus took place in the 1400s, and we know that the temple is being built in about 1000 BC, the 900s, 970 some BC. All right, in chapter 6, we're going to see all about the construction of the temple, and it takes 7 years, actually 7.5 years, to build the temple, and the temple is a beautiful, beautiful place. You'll see that the temple is 90 feet long and it's 30 feet wide and 45 feet high. It's very high, has windows up high to let light in, and the whole interior of the temple, as you can see, is overlaid with gold. So when those windows allow the sunshine into that room, we are talking about gold floors, gold ceiling, gold walls, everything gold. This would be spectacular. And you can see that there are these 2 pillars we'll talk about called Jachin and Boaz on the porch. So besides, the 90-foot long temple, you also have a porch that extends out. So we have a 15-foot deep front porch and 2 bronze pillars outside that are just beautiful. And we have side rooms all along the perimeter, perhaps on 2 sides, maybe on 3 sides of the temple. And these are storage rooms. And we find that here are kept all of the treasures, Solomon's favorite treasures in the entire kingdom. In chapter 6, verses 11 through 13, we see that God promises once again blessing for Solomon. As you build this house, let me just reassure you that if you are obedient, then I will bless you. I will never forsake your people. I will dwell right here with you and never forsake you. And the bad news, of course, is that Solomon is not obedient and the kingdom is divided. How awful. In verse 12, we have the Lord saying, I will not forsake my people. And of course, he didn't forsake his people, but the kingdom was indeed divided. In chapter 6, verses 14 through 36, we have the description of the inside of the temple. And as I said, overlaid with gold on top of panels, wood panels. And it must have been something to see. In verses 19 and 22, we have the description of the cherubim. And they are 15 feet tall. And their wingspan is also 15 feet. So 15 feet every direction. And because of that, great wingspan, 15 feet, you can put 2 of them side by side, and that way they take up the entire width of the temple. And they also are gold. So once again, beautiful. Everything on the outside of the temple proper is bronze, but once you come inside, everything is gold. And you'll see that this is an amazing structure, a beautiful structure. Josephus, speaking about the next temple, this one gets destroyed, another one is built, but speaking about that temple, he said, if you have never seen the temple in Jerusalem, you have never seen a beautiful building. So that's Solomon's temple. Now, there's one other thing of interest that I want to point out to you. Today, if you go to Israel, you want to see the temple site. And of course, the Dome of the Rock is there today, right next to the Wailing Wall, or what is called the Western Wall. In the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall, which borders the Dome of the Rock, there are 450 very large stones, and they're in 7 rows. And this little group of stones is special because it actually dates all the way back to Bible days. So in 70 AD, when the temple was destroyed, eyewitnesses said that the entire temple complex was knocked down except for the Roman fort. The Roman fort is the fortress of Antonia. And they said that was not knocked down, but everything else was laid to the ground. And as Jesus said in Matthew 24, verse 2, he said, not one stone upon another. So, and eyewitnesses said, yep, that's what happened, with one exception, the Roman fort, the fortress of Antonia, because the Roman soldiers were not motivated to knock down their own fort, right? And so today we have that little section of the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall, which borders the Dome of the Rock, and we have to suggest that 7 rows left standing must have been where the fort of the Romans was. That was the only part that was left standing, right? So we think that must have been it. Well, if that's true, then where the Dome of the Rock is today, which everyone imagines is the location of Solomon's temple, that would not be correct. That would be the location of the Roman fort, and part of that wall is still standing today. And this would mean that the Dome of the Rock does not need to be torn down in order to rebuild the Temple of Solomon someday, as Bible prophecy indicates it shall be rebuilt. You don't have to knock down the Dome of the Rock to rebuild the Temple of Solomon, because the Dome of the Rock is where the fort was, not where Solomon's temple was. Solomon's temple was evidently 600 feet south of the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall, and a little higher in elevation. So someday a treaty might come to pass between Israel and the Arabs to leave their Dome of the Rock standing, because we're going to build Solomon's temple, rebuild it in the original location 600 feet south of the Wailing Wall. And that's just interesting for Bible prophecy. All right, so what should be our great life lesson today? And it is, like Solomon, be as smart as you can be. Solomon knew zoology, he knew horticulture, he knew agriculture, he knew engineering, he knew theology, he knew Bible trivia. You should do that. Be as smart as you can be in every area of life, people skills, everything. Be like, in the beginning we were talking about R.G. Letourneau. Be a Mr. Everything, be great at everything. But especially, grasp eternal and invisible things. That's the most important thing to be wise about. To understand that your degree of connection with God is the most important thing. Be smart about how to connect with God. Be smart about when and how to make that your priority, the most important thing of your day, moment by moment. Be smart in that. Be wise in that. And that's what Solomon was not good at. And that's too bad, because that's the most important thing to be good at, right? So that's real wisdom, and that should be our prayer today. We're going to pray today for insight and foresight to really see how each moment's choices relate to our degree of connection with God. Everything we choose to do every day relates to our degree of connection with God. And our degree of connection with God changes everything forever, eternally, invisibly. That's what we should be wise about. So I hope you'll pray in your heart as I pray out loud, okay? Father God, we ask that you will indeed help us to see, help us to have insight and foresight to see what is invisible and eternal, so that we measure every day's choices by how these affect our degree of connection with you, because that in turn affects everything that we really care about. So Lord, that's our prayer. Give us that wisdom, insight, and foresight for our degree of connection with you. If you give us that, we'll be so happy. This is what we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, God bless you today. Thank you for spending day 112 with me in our Bible in a Year Plus podcast. And as always, I sure hope I get to see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.